In conversation with Linwood Jackson Jr. Linwood Jackson is an author and philosopher of the Bible, specializing in mental and spiritual well-being, whose books creatively tell the story of his journey and resonate with curious minds. And on today's episode of Author Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy, and excitement to have on the show today, Linwood Jackson. How are you doing today, Linwood? Good evening from England.
Evening, early afternoon from Boston, from Massachusetts. So I'm happy to be here again. Time
Abs-
difference is crazy.
Ah, That's time travel for you. You know, the world keep rotating and we keep up having different time zones everywhere. Quite lovely, really, to have you back on the show after having spoke to you. I think, I'm not sure if it's up to 1 year ago or maybe several
A
months
year
ago.
ago. Yeah,
Wow.
it's been a year. Yeah,
Oh,
time
that's
flies.
quite a long while. Lovely, we're here again. So, Leewood, I need to first say that it's quite lovely to have you back on the show, and for us to come back and talk and have a conversation around a faith that works, whose description always seemed to be quite amazing, very well deep, and quite philosophic in nature. And I can see even from your bio that you're a philosopher of the Bible, so I think that's quite expected, really. But then I wanted to ask you. What inspired the making of a faith that works? How does this book come about? What is the foundation to the making of it? Why did you decide to write a book? And what is your mission towards writing this piece of literature?
A lot of people are surprised when I tell them that I have conversations not just with lay individuals who are in church and listening to pastors,
Yeah,
but I have pastors that actually do reach out to me and that have conversations with me about their belief. And one of the things that I've noticed over these past years is
yeah,
that pastors and ministers are saying, and confidently, they
mm,
don't believe in the things that they're preaching.
wow,
It's surprising when I have conversations with individuals that, they're going to church and they tell me church doesn't do anything for me anymore. Church isn't the place for me. Church hurts. Church, there's a lot of
mm,
negativity now.
yeah,
And when I tell them that the pastors themselves, in the conversations that I'm having with them, they themselves are letting me know that they don't believe the things that they have learned and that they're saying.
mm,
Because in the seminary, there's a difference between learning Bible and then achieving character within the philosophy.
mm,
So these pastors that are getting up there, they're having trouble now at this present time with their belief. And it was this continual conversation that I'm having with people that made me go, you know what? You section of people need to understand, not the section of people meaning priests, pastors, ministers, individuals that have this calling.
yeah,
You need to have a piece of literature, something to remind you of the inward essence of your own journey, so that by the time you're giving your, whatever you're giving to people, you
yeah,
can put a piece of you into what you're giving and also add in and tie in something philosophical,
mm,
something profound from the scriptures themselves. So that book came about only due to my conversations with pastors, seeing their need,
mm,
and placing my journey and the educational journey that I have with the Bible's philosophy into that book for
wow,
them. And knowing how they've benefited from my conversations, I wanted people that I've never even seen or heard of to buy or purchase or receive this literature, this book, and to let them know that it's a faith that works, because so often they're trying to make their faith work for them. And the
mm,
people that are listening to them are trying to make their faith work also. There shouldn't be a working faith. Faith should be working for us. The same way our heart beats and we don't feel it. Our stomach gets hungry. We can't control whether or not it does. It just works.
you
So our
know.
belief should work. And so I'm seeing that lacking, and that's what was the inspiration behind that
Wow.
book.
I must say that you've really carefully discovered, noticed, and
Mm,
crafted something that you feel you needed to talk about, something that you
mm,
feel you need to shed more light on, something that you find to be quite common, and you just wanted to shed more light, more enlightenment, more knowledge on it, and that being the source of inspiration towards the making of a book. I think it's a
yes.
lovely one, really. It's a beautiful one. It's a lovely style to utilize when it comes to writing. Quite commendable, I'd say. Thank you for sharing
Mm,
with us. And I also see that you have another book titled Azazel, The Search for
yes.
Life After Death. And I need to say that's such a beautiful title, really. I wanted to ask you, would you like to tell us about the making of that as well? And what message do you hope the readers take from the
Yeah,
search for life after death.
I began writing this book when I was actually an undergrad.
Oh,
And yeah, so it was published maybe 6 years after I graduated from college.
wow.
Well, maybe more than 6 years, but it was written at that time because I was going through a period in my life where I was unclear about who I was and what I was doing. And I think the last time that we were together, I told you that in my experience, I graduated from college
Yeah.
as an educated dummy because that's
Yeah, I
what
think
it
that makes me laugh. I did remember.
because that's really what our current educational institution is, and it's gotten worse every year. So, people are graduating and they're graduating as intellectual idiots, and I
Wow.
was one of them.
Wow.
And that's not, and I'm not, casting an insult on anyone. Literally, I'm casting an insult on the human experience that we all collectively share when we're going through the college educational institution, which doesn't really foster growth of human. It really fosters growth of societal citizen.
Mm,
So by the time we graduate, we have to make a decision. Am I a human for growth or am I a citizen for growth? And those
yeah.
have different implications. And when I was going through that journey as an undergrad, I was writing this book to express my confusion as a
Mm,
person and as a growing human. And
wow.
so a lot of the characters that are in this book, they're characters from my life.
Mm,
And as I mentioned to you previously, and even the main character Azazel, I have this name specifically. Azazel is supposed to be in Hebrew mythology a god that is not good, who later transitions to the Satan character in Christian theology or Christian theoretical religion. I
mm,
chose this specific character because this is the representation of what I was feeling like. Azazel is highlighted as being a scapegoat
mm,
in sense. So going through the educational institution, I felt like a scapegoat for society. But
mm,
I'm not that. I know I'm not that. I am more than that. And so
wow.
the main character is going through a journey of discovering the more than within himself. And along the
Wow.
way, he's meeting characters, he's going through challenges, and he's understanding that within him, he has ties to a growth of empire. There's an
Yeah.
empire that he's connected to, both within himself and through his lineage, and he has to decide which one he wants to conquer or can he conquer both. So
Mm,
that's really the main journey. It's the journey of a bit of an existential growth and development to more of an introspectiveness of what it means to be a person that has skills, talents, feelings, thoughts, and ambitions.
wow. That's a
Yeah,
trunk load you've mentioned in there. I love
yeah.
your description of that. It's quite amazing and quite pulling. And if you have a copy of Azazel, I would like you to
Oh,
read it to the
yes.
camera. Just shows what
Yes,
it
right
looks like.
here.
Beautiful cover you've got even. Would you like to talk about the making of the cover? Because to me, I think every artwork, just like we have books that tell stories, sculptures tell stories, paints, drawing, all of those
Yes.
artworks tell stories. Would you like to talk about the making of the cover if there's any story behind it?
Well, the main character Azazel has dreadlocks, as
Yeah.
as I. He's got the scar over the eye,
Yeah.
and his eyes are closed. So
Yeah.
basically, he's got wounds that he has within himself, and he's probably shut to them. So when
Mm,
he opens his eyes, the scars won't go away, but he will be able to see a reflection of who he has become through the scars.
mm,
So this is just the first book. The eye is closed. In the second book, there's more illumination, and his eyes will definitely be open for the journey that
wow.
he has. And the
Wow.
title, Search for Life After Death, in the book itself, the main character Azazel has to go through a period of a loss of consciousness while he's still possessing consciousness. So he's in a state of loss of consciousness and he's hovering in a bit of a dream state to understand when he gets out of that state what he
Wow.
has to do to conquer himself. So he's dying to himself to come back to himself so he can die really to really understand who he should resurrect to be.
That's quite amazing to know, really. I love your take of that. I love your
Thank
description
you.
of that. Quite beautiful and quite great. And now I'd like us to go back to a fate that works. Just for the
Okay.
sake of readers who haven't read that yet, and without giving much information away, I know you've already talked a bit about it, yeah? I wanted you to give us more sneak peek of what you'd expect in terms of themes and subject lines picking up a fate that works.
main theme, the main motif of the book itself is to make
Yeah.
sure that your faith or your belief is working for you.
Yeah.
And that involves you having the courage to challenge what you believe.
Mm.
And when you do, you'll be able to understand that what you think you know and what you think you believe is actually not what is actually believable to the individual within you. So
Wow.
each chapter is a piece of, a little nugget of
Mm.
wisdom to get the individual reader to understand what it means to have a belief that works
Yeah.
and to have a system set in place so that they can continue to engage their belief in an intellectual and
Mm.
highly inward introspective way because
Absolutely.
you go from talking about early on in the book the difference between a ritualistic belief and then a belief that is inward, which follows externally.
Yeah.
So the idols, instead of wearing it around your chest or in your ear or hanging it from your car rear view window or hanging it up in a picture in your room,
Yeah.
instead of having it on the front of the house or in the kitchen, you're
Yeah.
going to now transfer all of that as little sayings into what is going on within your heart. And
Mm.
those sayings are going to then become the idols. And then you're going to need to break those idols because still those are idols you're clinging onto.
Mm.
Break them and allow the fragments that are then broken to reform into an intelligent wisdom to live by. So
Wow.
each chapter is detailing how to live by wisdom that is found within the scripture itself, but then also taken and placed into the life and then used practically. So
Mm.
each chapter gives a different angle, a different perspective from the beginning, starting with the very basic or ritualistic experience versus an inward reflective experience,
Mm.
all the way to the end where it goes to how do you apply this to a group setting? Because the audience is pastors. This is an audience for the seminary students, the anyone involved in service, and this can also be applied in secular life, whether you are an organizational leader. You still have to commit yourself to an ethical standard when you're dealing with people.
Absolutely.
And so from the beginning of the ritual to the end of how can this benefit the group as a whole, and you
Mm.
still remain within that group, yet separate from it, the book just touches on those kind of themes on how to allow what you know to work for you instead of
Mm.
sweating over what you know.
Absolutely. Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love your take on that. That's so beautiful, quite
Thank
fun,
you.
and quite amazing. I love the fact that you had to go a bit too much deep into the
Mm,
characterization, into the subject lines
mm,
and themes we'd expect reading that. Quite beautiful to know. Thank you. And now, Newwood, your book spans genre from fiction and poetry to self-development and spiritual
mm.
well-being. And I'm just so curious as to how you're able to juggle all of these things together without, leaving one behind. How do you
Mm.
weave this together to tell the story of your personal and philosophical journey, even in a way you would love to share with us? I love that too.
I think it has to do with everything that I've been through. Every book is a lesson for me. I'm not saying that in any book I'm the expert on everything.
Mm.
It's just that I'm living the juggling.
Uh,
And as I'm writing this, I'm making sense of the act of itself.
uh,
So it's this that needs to be understood if you particularly are going through it, and it will benefit you.
yeah,
And there is a piece of everything, like you said, within it.
yeah,
There's a piece of the discouragement. There is a piece of the empowerment. There is a piece of the philosophical side of what it means to be human. There
yeah.
is a piece of the negative side of what it means to possess the human condition.
Absolutely.
Every single one of these themes I can juggle because each and every single one of these themes
Mm.
every single day I wrestle with. So,
Wow.
nothing that I write is foreign to me because I'm going through it. I've been through it, and I see myself uh,
Mm.
moving beyond it. But at the same time, it's a bit of a resonation that I want to have with individuals that are going through the same thing, that may
Mm.
not know who they are, that may be wrestling with themselves, and are
Yeah,
looking for something that they can pull from a mental perspective, something
yeah.
reflective, something to, you know, become addicted to in a positive way for progression, addicted to healing. Something's preventing healing. Well, now you can have maybe a sentence that can make you go, I need to really think about this. So then
Mm.
you become addicted to enhancing your well-being while
Wow.
understanding what's going on that's stopping that. So I
Wow.
deal with this within myself. And so placing it into writing and wrestling with it, it's an art of what it means, I guess, to be a writer, but it's just the human coming out.
Wow, that's such a beautiful, such an amazing and lovely one, really. I love your take on that, and I love the way you're able to describe all of these things in a quite beautiful and well detailed manner, quite
Mhm.
didactic, quite educative, quite informative and introspective to me. Thank you for sharing. I love the sound of it.
Thank
Now,
you.
as somebody who has written, because I know you've written on very lovely, beautiful themes, yeah? But then
Mm,
you may want to agree with me that one of the things that makes literature to be quite complex is the fact that it can be interpreted by different people in different ways. You've
mm,
written an amazing topic, which I think to me is also quite argumentative in nature. Is the one that's
yes,
spark of conversation. Somebody can
yes,
get like, oh yeah, somebody can get mad with what you've written
yes,
all of a
very much.
sudden without even thinking twice. You can receive so many kind of criticism of what nature, etc.
Yep.
I mean, I write also in the team of philosophy, so sometimes I get backlash. Yeah, I don't believe in this. Oh, that's just a fallacy, etc. So
Yep.
I'd like to
Yep.
ask you because this is one of the things I find to be quite amazing about literature, the way that a particular piece of artwork could be interpreted differently by different readers based on their opinion. And sometimes some of the readers may get the message, the actual message, the intention you're trying
Mm,
to pass on 100% in the writing. Why some may not get the message, some may be close to getting the message, some may get a bit of it, say 50%, some may not be able to get the message, some may be very far from getting the message, say several miles or several kilometers away from getting the message. And hilariously, you would add some who would entirely interpret the book upside down and just say, give you a negative impression of what you actually intended. And as all of these things keep topping in back and forth, coming in and out, I always love to ask authors, love to ask storytellers and writers, how do you feel when you get a strong crowd of different ideas, different feedbacks coming from readers, dropping in from different angles? How do you feel getting to see people interpret your works differently than what you intended? How does that make you feel as a writer?
as a writer, once your work is out there in the public, it's no longer yours.
That's
That's that's the cold truth, is that it's no longer yours, and you're no longer, a writer. You are basically associated to thoughts,
yeah.
to passages, and to themes. And that goes along with audience. And that's the trip about being a writer, is because when you put something out as a writer, you want everyone to gravitate to it. And
Yeah.
it's so special. It's so great. You put it out there, you expect everyone to read it.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes nobody reads it, and then sometimes the wrong people read it. But then you find your audience, which is something that, for me has been unintentional when I talk about I expect, the philosophical side of life to mean something to people,
Mm,
and quite frankly, it doesn't. What they find interesting is how the philosophical side of life has impacted me.
mm,
So they don't want the information on the philosophical side of life. They want the reflective side of the philosophical life upon me, which then will give them a shadow of how they should interpret what is being said or written in the literature, and then also from me, so that they might be able to take something from it without even maybe needing to read it, or
yeah.
when they're now reading it, having a different perspective of how that they themselves can weave together into their own stream of thought,
Mm,
how not the information is impacting them, but
yeah.
how the reflection of the information is impacting me, which is
Yeah.
so weird. And then the story I wanted to just briefly share to you is that I have a book called the uh, A Fallen Record: The Christian Transgression. And
Wow.
this is a history book, and I'm using only the New Testament, and I'm showing how the present Christian religion went away from what the apostles that are written of in the New Testament taught. So
Mm,
I couldn't find a history book that really taught me this, so I went into the New Testament and I just looked for it myself, and they tell you the history and
yeah.
the review. There are a multitude of reviews on this book, and somebody actually came up to me and said that I saw that someone gave you such a bad review on that book. I wanted to know what triggered them so much, so I bought it.
Wow. You
Can
see?
you believe that? So it's really not, it's when you're an author, you don't really have to worry about anything
Yeah.
because negativity and negative publicity is still positive
Yeah,
publicity.
absolutely.
So when somebody's speaking really hard against you as a writer, you have to
Mm,
actually take that as a positive because you've done something to trigger them. And even though
yeah.
they may have said something wrong and may have
Yeah.
misinterpreted, someone is
Yeah.
going to read that. And then someone weird in this world or a multitude of weird people are going to say, whoever triggered them, whatever triggered them in this, I need to
Yeah.
buy this book.
Absolutely.
And they will. And I've had a lot of people tell me that because of there's good reviews, there's bad, but the ones that really seem like this book triggered individuals, they've
Yeah.
let me know I bought this book because of it triggering people.
You may see that.
So so when it comes to, dealing as an author with how people
Yeah,
construct and reconstruct your writing, it's not yours anymore once it's in the public. And
absolutely.
everything that happens thereafter, it's a trickle down effect that will benefit you. You don't have to worry
Yeah.
about anything. It will
Yeah.
benefit you.
I love your take on that, really. Quite amazing and quite fun. Because I
Mm,
think it's one of the things also that makes book club meetings to be quite fun. The way people can come together, they've read the same book, but they come
yeah,
together to talk about it. And the first person review might be the same thing with the second person, or again, it might be different from the third person, different from the fourth person, and they keep bringing in
keeps going.
different ideas, perception of what they think of the book. And I love your idea about negative publicity as well, because sometimes, people are like, okay, you've read a bad review about a book, let me go and check it and see what exactly it's all about. What's
Yeah,
what, what prompted this person to leave this kind of, so it's all positive and negative always impact both books in different ways. Yeah, so
yes.
it's a lovely one, really. I do
You,
appreciate your take on that. Quite relatable
you,
too, because I
thank
I've,
you.
I've been in that shoe too.
You never know. And I spoke to
Absolutely.
my publicist at the time, oh, my publisher. I
Mm,
said, "What's going on with this review? Like, this is weird." And my publisher said, "Well, this is clearly a troll, but there's nothing that I can do about it." So I'm just saying that because in the
yeah,
moment you feel frantic, you feel, however, it's
yeah,
disappointing. But
yeah.
when you see how life and things work out, then you begin to understand that writing is you become just a vessel for a message, and your audience is just your audience. So you're writing, even though you don't
Absolutely.
know it, there's an audience for you. So
Yeah.
even though you want your book to hit everybody, it won't. That's fine. But you're here and born to hit a specific audience, and they will get it.
That's amazing. I love your take on that. Thank you for sharing. And also, Linwood, you are a philosopher of the Bible. As a
Mm,
philosopher of the Bible, how do you approach writing fiction or poetry differently than traditional religious or spiritual text? When I mean traditional religion
mm,
or spiritual text, now I mean maybe making references to the Bible or some other
mm-hmm,
spiritual writing. Now, as a philosopher of the Bible, how do you
mm-hmm.
approach writing fiction or poetry differently than traditional religious or spiritual text? If you'd like to talk about that.
There is a specific way that the Hebrew language and the Hebrew culture from Genesis to Malachi articulates its position.
Hmm.
And the kind of literature that the Hebrew scriptures are, there is a bit of what's called Hebrew parallelism in there, where there are parallel idioms that are within there that resonate a bit of fiction, but also highlight historicity within the fiction.
Hmm.
So I take the historicity within fiction, and then I
Yeah.
apply it to my own self when I'm writing literature. And when I'm writing literature, I always want to make sure that there is historicity in the fiction that I'm giving.
Hmm.
So one of the things when I'm writing fiction, I always want to go, is this how it happened? This
Yeah.
scene never happened in life, never happened in reality, never legitimately will ever happen, but it happened. Did it
Wow.
happen like this? Is this how it happened?
Wow.
And when you review that and you think about, well, no, that's not how it happened, even though you know this never happened, but
Hmm.
you're writing from the perspective of his historicity within the fiction, that makes you change the dynamic and it makes you place more of a bit of realism. It makes you pull from within yourself into the narrative to
Hmm.
transform it into fiction. So that's where the historicity part comes in. Is
Wow.
this the way that the enigma within me is experiencing this piece right now?
Wow. Oh,
And
lovely.
so then you're taking that part, that it's the real enigma, and you're taking a piece of your own personal history and you're making it into fiction, and then you're resounding that fiction into a narrative and into a web and into a an interconnected connectedness that falls right back down to the enigma of you, and
Mm,
the cycle just repeats. So
absolutely.
this is how the Bible educates. This is the kind of literature that's in the Bible,
Yeah.
which, from us in a Western world, when we're reading it, it just looks like words and whatever. I don't know how it will look, but from an intellectual point of view and
Yeah.
from a cultural, contextual point of view, when you're taking in the cultural context of the Hebrew scriptures and how those authors articulate what they're writing, there's a
Mm,
craft. There's a craft, and their craft is very scenic. And that scenic craft translates to a bit of imagery that in 2025 for us in the West,
mm.
it's not going to make that much sense if we don't get to the cultural context.
Oh,
So when
wow.
I'm writing, I always now make sure when I'm writing fiction, I should say fiction or poetry, the cultural context that the authors apply in there, I'm applying it to my own living experiences and into my poetry.
Interesting. Oh,
So
wow.
I'm making sure everything has cultural context to it, and that cultural context has a historical fiction narrative to it, and
Mm,
I'm making sure that historical fiction narrative from the cultural context ties back to the enigma that is within me, and I'm
wow.
continually doing the cycle over and over again. So this is how I
Wow.
apply. This is how I linguistically, philosophically, and culturally apply what's going
Wow.
on from the Bible into
Wow.
my own work. Yeah.
Wow. That's such an amazing one, really. That's such a lovely and beautiful one. I love the take on that. Sounds
Thank
to me
you.
to be quite beautiful and quite awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. And now,
Thank
just
you.
apart from the books we've mentioned so far and Toshan so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
My recent book is not a fiction. It's not philosophy. It's more along the lines of still Bible philosophy, where
Oh,
I'm analyzing the Jesus character and the philosophy behind that, and tying it back and looking at the aspect of resurrection, how it's laid out philosophically within the text, and how it differs from what we in our contemporary society and contemporary religious society perceive it as
yeah.
the authors had a different intention than what contemporary society has traditionally known
Mm,
to upheld. So that's called a dawn of devotion,
wow.
looking at how
Wow.
sincere, practical, and mental devotion for the purpose of refining what is personal, what is human, and what is mental or inward, looking at how that surfaces throughout the scripture, and how the
Wow.
character of Jesus, the Jesus character, really gets that across from the Genesis to Malachi, Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament
Mm,
narrative and position. It's just more nonfiction,
wow.
more philosophical from that aspect. So yeah, more again from questions that I get from people and
Mm,
conversations that I have from people. I
mm,
have a bunch of books that I have lined up, but when I have
wow.
conversations with people, I go, you know what? This actually seems like what you're saying is more necessary for people
Yeah.
at this time. I need to
Yeah.
just do that. So I put my stuff on the back burner, and what the audience is looking for, what the people conversations are telling me, I,
Yeah.
I do that.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
love that so much. You've got a lot ongoing, really. Quite commendable. And I hope you find some times to sleep. You know,
Funny.
it's quite a lot writing all of these books together. It's quite an amazing one of the reasons why I think writers need to be praised more for their works. They need more recognition, more accolades, because a lot of work goes into the making of these books. A lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of,
Mm,
personal intuition, perspective, point of views, and ideas, messages. It's just a lot involved. Thank you
very
for
true.
sharing. And also, just apart from, your work seem to speak to the curious mind. It is
Mm-hmm.
very obvious from the first one we've just talked about and the other one, it's very obvious how so crucial it speaks to the curious mind. What kind of questions or internal struggles do you hope your readers explore? through your
Mm.
writing.
This is another thing that has come from conversations. I've begun maybe a year and a half ago to start an online class.
Yeah.
So I have an online class with students, and all throughout my journey,
Mm,
individuals reach out to me about or write to me about the fact that they have pain from their religious experience. So
mm,
they've got trauma from the religion, from their religious experience, from their
wow.
belief, from their spirituality. They have trauma. And this
Wow.
trauma has, in a sense, dehumanized them because, in a sense, they've gone through life with a belief and they've given so much to this belief. And then they've hit a point where they realize the belief does not mix with what's going on with reality, either externally or internally. And
Wow.
so a lot is framed around these subjects
Mm,
of understanding what the Bible is actually saying,
yeah.
but then understanding what it means to heal from your trauma, to
Mm,
heal from the
mm,
things that you have gone through. So
wow.
this is really the main theme or main point of all of my works, even though they are philosophy based and even the fiction has, and the poetry, all of everything just ties back into how do you heal from what you believe. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a belief that's religious. You can believe in a mother or father that is continually inflicting some sort of abuse
Absolutely.
onto you, and you're still in that situation. You can be in it with a partner, you can be in a job, occupation. You can
Mm,
have so much that's going on that's stopping you from you, and this is the belief you have. You're holding on, and
yeah.
all of my work is just about how do you make sure that your belief is intellectual, is sound, and is benevolent toward you, and especially
Mm,
to the people that are around you. That's really what it comes down to is the theme of hurt people that when they hear me, they reach out for their confusion about their
mm,
experience, where they intend to go, and where the religion has stopped them from going. And so then
wow.
I cater to these people because I've gone through the same in my own experience, not on a religious spectrum, but
Yeah.
societal, being in the educational institution. And right now, I'm getting my second master's in psychology.
Interesting.
So I'm understanding from a student, from a human, from a person, from a intellectual, from a non-intellectual,
Yeah.
from a spiritual, from a despiritualized
Mm,
perspective of what it means to go through the journey, and the things that
lovely.
I put out there, the people that react, they all interact with me for this one purpose.
This is such an amazing one. This is such a beautiful, wholesome one. This is such a
Mm,
lovely ride into your
yeah.
books, into the making of them, into the themes you talk on, into the subject lines you explore on, into some of the most crucial and beautiful aspects of your writing, into philosophy, and quite a lot we've mentioned so far. This is very great. And I need to say thank you so much for even coming up to share and talk about the story. It's quite beautiful, really. And just in case we have some viewers who are watching, I would love to get a copy of any of your books. On what
Mm.
platform are they available on for purchase?
All platforms, really. You can go to Amazon, type my name, Linwood Jackson Jr., into Amazon, or type my name into Google, Linwood
Yeah,
Jackson Jr.
it
You
pops
can,
up.
and everything pops up, including my website, which has a section on my website for my books, which actually just takes you to Amazon, where you can just purchase them.
Interesting. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Linwood Jackson book directly on Amazon, on Barnes& and Nobles, on his
Mm,
website, and also on other platforms. I also left a link to his social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Linwood, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature again. I must say it's quite lovely catching up with you. Quite great having a conversation around a fit that works. Quite great having a conversation on your novel and several other of your works you've done so far. This is very beautiful, very
thank you.
amazing, quite
Thank you.
worthy and animated. Thank you once again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, really.